is Cele Reinglass. I was born in Newark, New Jersey in 1911. My mother and dad were second cousins, and my mother was brought up, as I remember, was told by grandparents rather than her mother. Her father died when he was 20 years old, and her mother traveled a lot. And I think she died when she was 40. My mother went to visit her aunt in Russia, and she met my father there. But they went to England. They were married in Liverpool. They lived there, and my brother Art was born there. And after she was born there, then my mother and dad came to Newark. And then when my mother became pregnant with her second child, she said she didn't want her child to be born in a foreign country. So she went back to Liverpool and stayed with her mother-in-law until her second child, Charles, my brother Charles, was born. Then she came back to this country. I can't tell you what Newark was like. I'm sure it was nicer than it is today, I know that. I remember I must have been about 2 years old, not anymore, because my mother was pushing me in a buggy. And my father, I can see the open-air theater, and my father was the manager or the owner, I don't know which, of this vaudeville show. But I can see my father coming out on the stage and making announcements of who was coming on next. Right this second as I speak with you, I can see that open-air theater. I can see my dad standing there. I can even hear and he came out and said Nellie Kessman. And she was an outstanding Jewish movie actress at that time.
And then when we left Newark, we went to Richmond, Virginia. And my father had a candy store there.
Anyhow, at the end of the year, we moved to Canton, Ohio, because he got a job in Canton, Ohio, as a tailor. And he worked hard in that tailoring shop because my brothers, Art and Charles, wanted to go to college. So in order to make enough money to send them to college, he would work till 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And then he'd go to sleep right on the table. And he'd get up in the morning and keep right on working. Then he bought out the place where he was working. He was working for Saran Agency, and he bought him out, and it was his shop. And then it turned into a real estate office. He had a real estate office. Then he had sidelines. He bought a cheese factory about 50 miles from here, and he ran the cheese factory for a while. Then he made some money there. When he sold it, that I don't remember, but I remember going there and getting the cheese and all that. And then he actually had a coal mine down around Liverpool. And I remember going down into the coal mine. I don't know what happened to it, but he was very venturesome. At that stage of my life, I was content. I was happy unto myself. We lived on McKinley Avenue, and my mother was busy in the house, so I would go out and sit on the swing on the porch. But I didn't bother my mother and say, I'm bored, I have nothing to do, what shall I do? You know what, I think I was a dreamer. I think I was a dreamer. Barney, Art, and Charles. The three of them would be walking downtown together, and everyone called them the Three Musketeers. They were very close. You could see them around town all the time. One was practicing dentistry, and the other was practicing medicine. My brother Art, he was the oldest, and when he graduated grade school, he got a job at Republic Steel. I think it was during the war, the first war, right after. So anyhow, it was a good job and paying very well. And then he decided that this wasn't what he wanted. He wanted a profession. He wanted to be a dentist. So he kept on working, and he went to night school and worked. And this is all on his own. My dad didn't push him, because my dad was mostly interested in, I don't know, I guess making a living, making money, and stuff like that. And he said, well, he's doing well in Republic Steel, what does he need it for? But he put himself through high school, and he graduated high school in 2 years. And then he went to the University of Cincinnati Dental School. My brother Charles, who was older than I was a doctor. He was a very special person. Everybody just loved him. Most fantastic sense of humor. He could tell you the dirtiest joke, and you wouldn't think it was crude or rude or anything of the kind. But if my brother Art told it, it wasn't nice. His patients idolized him. They really did. And I told you the other doctors called him Spinoza. He had encephalitis. And as a result, he developed Parkinson's. But it was a long time before they realized that he had Parkinson's. He went from one doctor to another, from one he was dragging a leg, he was having a problem with his speech, was a little thick, you know. And he went from one doctor to another, and then they'd send him to psychiatrists, and nothing ever helped him. And years later, they realized that he had Parkinson's and that it came from the encephalitis. But he was a gutsy person. Nothing stopped him. You know, he kept on going. I am a lot like, mostly like my father, but I have the docility of my mother. She was a very docile person, and she wanted her 4 children to go to college. And my father said, "Oh, they don't have to go to college, and especially not the girls, you know." My mother said, "Nope, they want to go and they're going." And she didn't seem like a domineering person at all. In her quiet way, she got what she wanted. I think most of my dreams have been pretty much fulfilled. One of them wasn't. I wanted to be a physician, and my brothers were older than I was, and I was very tiny. And they said, "It's too hard. You cannot study medicine." So I said, "Well, then I'll be a nurse." They said, "Oh, no, you can't be a nurse because that's really physically hard." Before I went to college, I decided I was going to be a dietitian. My mother didn't take me to college, but Aunt Libby and I got on the train. She took me down to Ohio State and took me to the dorm.
Libby and Cele went to Columbus by train. And I'd hate to say it, but Cele was not a well young lady. And I remember when my sister said that they arrived in her room, the first thing she did, she lay down on the bed. She was so tired. She said, "Florence, I just hated to leave her."
And she said when she left me there and went home, she felt so sorry for me. I was so little and I didn't know anybody. But somehow I managed. I did very well. So I registered in the school. At that time, home economics was in the School of Agriculture. So I registered there. But there were parts of it I didn't like, the home economics part, the sewing and everything. I just took my stuff to the dressmaker and had her do it and then brought it back to class. I wasn't about to sit and sew. My roommate and I, Bernice, we were the opposites. I was quiet, and she was very outgoing, and she had a blues voice. And wherever we went, she was the center of attention. And yet she seemed to cling to me. And to this day, we're good friends. Bernice and I transferred to the University of Illinois our junior year in college, you know. We said we were tired of the boys in Ohio State and we were going to the University of Illinois. So when we got there, we lived in what they called an approved house. And there were 6 or 7 women lived in the house. It was, I guess it wasn't a real fancy house or anything, but it didn't have to be fancy for me to be happy, you know? Anyhow, so she was dating someone by the name of Jack, and one evening, Jack came over to visit her in the living room. I was upstairs in my bedroom, and she said, and he yelled, "Cele, come on down, I want you to meet my new roommate." So I came halfway down, and I peeked through the banisters. I was wearing an old sweater, I wasn't dressed up. And I kind of liked the way he looked, so I came all the way down. And I met him. And the next day on campus, I was walking and carrying my books, and someone said to me, "May I carry your books for you?" That was it. That was the beginning and the end. We never had a time when we proposed. We just knew we were going to get married. But also I knew that if I didn't go to him, I was never going to get married. And I knew that that he wasn't aggressive, and he wasn't that kind of a person. So if I wanted to marry Sam Reinglass, I had to go to Sam Reinglass, and I wanted to marry him. So I went into the office. I got a list of all the hospitals in Chicago. I think there were 36 approved hospitals at that time. And I sat down and I wrote to 36 hospitals for a job as a dietitian. That's where I say I'm a little bit, you know. And I think only 2 answered. And I went to interview the 2, and I got a job at Mount Sinai.
I don't know whether she wants me to tell you this or not, but his father insisted on giving the ring to my sister. Sam didn't have the money. I guess he paid for the ring, and he was going to give it to her.
I never thought anything of it at the time. We were over at their house for dinner, and my father-in-law said, Cele, I want you to come in the bedroom. I want to show you something. And I went in the bedroom, and he gave me the engagement ring, which I think was something that he had made up from my mother-in-law, you know, a stone or something that was left. And I'm not sure whether he knew that he was giving it to, we were going to get married. We knew that all the time. But I never thought anything of it, and I don't think he did either until years later. I guess I used to throw it up to him, and he felt badly. When I hear about all the romantic ways that everybody's given their engagement ring in a box of popcorn and different things, you know. But I didn't care. That was so unimportant to me. I mean, what was important that I was going to get to live with this man for the rest of my life. I was going to get to sleep with him, and he was going to hold me and love me, you know. That's what was important to me. Who cared about the engagement ring? I think you miss a lot in life if you don't have children. I really do. On the other hand, you're safe from an awful lot of heartache.
Well, my mother was 7 months pregnant with me. It was in July of 1939, and her mother had not been feeling well, and I don't know what it was. I don't think they ever knew. Possibly it was her heart. But she had been very sick that day. Mother can tell the story better, but she died in her arms. And I was her first child, and so she named me after her mother. And my Hebrew name is Cele Reinglass, which became Sarah Gale.
I have a lot of my father in me. He was very persistent and meticulous and almost obsessive compulsive. On the other hand, my mother has a high degree of achievement-oriented ability. The motivation and the interests that I've developed have been really a manifestation of them. And I don't just mean because they left their genetic material in my presence, but because I grew up with them and I witnessed them and I watched them and I saw how they did things. And obviously, I took on those characteristics.
In February, when we got engaged, and I called my parents, I said, I'm engaged, and my father said, to whom? He had no idea, although we really had been dating. I mean, he really should have known, but I mean, obviously my mother knew right away, because mothers know those things, right?
Well, she always said she wanted to marry somebody that was tall and a good dancer and rich. And when she brought Frank home, I said, Sarah Gale, is that it? He's not tall, he's not rich, and I don't think he's a good dancer. She says, Mom, you're right, but he has what's important. And then I knew she had matured.
Since Frank had no family, no parents, you know, he just really accepted my parents, you know, wholeheartedly.
Well,
I mean, you accepted the whole family. There was never any stress or any problem, you know,
Just got
right from the
accepted by the
beginning.
family and got a Holden family.
I never even think of him as a son-in-law, you know, he's just my son. There isn't anything Frank wouldn't do for me if I asked him to do it. That I know.
My in-laws are very much like my family was. My father was a surgeon, was also with a surgical temperament, and my mother was the light side of the family, whether it's singing, telling stories, or what. She was a teacher, so it was very interesting to see that how similar that they were to both my in-laws.
You know, when my children were married, and I sat down there and watched and listened to the rabbi, I didn't say, "Dear God, please see that they don't have any heartache or anything bad happen to them in life." I said, "Dear God, please help them to cope."
When you talk about
But-
boundaries, there really weren't any, because they were, I'd say, pretty much natural and just fit in.
And
So there wasn't any imposition, I don't think
Yeah.
we've ever had an argument that I know of.
no, and because
you could say if you didn't agree with each other. So it was,
we didn't
so just
always agree
natural.
on things. There's no question about that. They didn't always agree with the way we were disciplining the children or doing this with the children,
They
but
could tell us.
She was, and still is, I think, a person who has a strong belief in certain values. And for the most part, I think I'll remember her as a person who has always been supportive of the family.
Well, I don't think I can take any credit for that. I just always loved them to pieces, and I always wanted to share their problems, and therefore I got to share their joys.
Last year, a year ago to the day almost, Grandma and I flew together to go to Miami for Kenny and Heather's wedding. And we're on the airplane talking kind of normally. And I just got back from Israel. And I was recalling to her how, when I first got there, I said, "Oh my God, I'm gonna be here for 6 months. I mean, you know, how am I gonna, so long?" And once the trip ended and I was done, I couldn't believe how fast it went. It was like a flash. And I kind of presented her with that to say, "Was that what your life was like?" And she said, "Absolutely." And we kind of talked about that, and I went on, we're talking about other things, probably, you know, some things probably significant and insignificant. It didn't really matter. And the stewardess came up to us and she said to Grandma, "Is this your grandson?" And she said, "Yes, it is." And she said, "You know, isn't he handsome?" or something that embarrassed me. And then she said, "Okay, I just had to make sure he wasn't your date." She said, "I've been watching you two since you got on the airplane. You haven't stopped talking. And you look like two people, like a couple on their first date." And it was kind of neat. And it made me kind of stop and think for a second. Grandma just kind of laughed, and then I kind of thought that I thought how natural it was, you know, to have a conversation like that.
I feel incredibly lucky to have grown up with her, knowing her, and not just knowing her, but living so close to her and getting to spend the kind of time that we have together, quality time, and certainly that I got to grow into adulthood knowing her and not just have her as my grandmother, but I would say in almost every sense in the world, having her as a friend.
The children do share their personal lives with her and feel as though they can, which is unique, because each person is so different that it takes someone special to be able to have the flexibility to accommodate all of these different dimensions of whatever they may be experiencing.
She's someone who I think all of us could always talk to about anything, including sex and boyfriends and girlfriends and anything, and that's great because it's interesting to have the perspective from someone who's in their 70s when you're in your teens.
My grandmother hasn't distinguished herself in the way that a lot of people have, in the sense that she didn't cure cancer, she didn't complete a surgical residency and save people's lives as a doctor. However, what she has done is she's developed a very firm, defined bond with the people that are important to her in her life.
She plays an active role, I think, in every family member's life. And I think to every person in the family that means something different. To every child and grandchild. I mean, I think every grandchild is kind of so different. and into so many different things.
I remember, you know, when we were younger that we used to go camping all the time, and I remember one specific trip to Mohican where Grandma and Grandpa would come down and meet us and stay in the this cabin down at the other end of the campground. It was kind of cool because I remember seeing them riding on a bicycle built for two, which is something that you'd never, you know, picture them doing, you know, even when they were 20.
I can't think of one of their friends that would ever have done such a thing.
It's true.
In fact, one year I remember we got these huge inner tubes and we put them in these inner tubes and we went down the river. Now that I look back on it, I can't believe they did that because neither one of them had ever done anything like that.
I wasn't aware that I was being different. I was always very involved with their lives and very, very interested. And so as a result, I've been closer and had a lot of pleasures, but then I've had a lot more worry and concern than I would have had. You can't have one without the other. They go hand in hand. I would have gone any place when I was young. I don't know, maybe I didn't have any sense, but if my husband had said, let's go to South America and give up your family, I would have said, great. I wanted to go, I wanted to see, and I wanted to do. It was great traveling. Well, we went with another couple for years, Bill and Elaine Jacobson. He was a doctor in Canton, too. And it was fun because he had curiosity like I did, and Elaine was more like Sam and wasn't that excited about see all the little things that Bill and I wanted to do. But we traveled together, but we did what we wanted to do. If we went to a play in London and she didn't like it and they said they're leaving, we didn't feel we had to leave because they left. They left. And we stayed to the end. So what I'm trying to say is we were independent of each other, and yet we had the pleasure of each other's company. Well, we were in Italy, and we went to St. Anne's, and we went to the, what's that cave, that blue grotto? And I have claustrophobia. And we took this little boat up to the cave, and when Bill and Elaine saw it, they wouldn't go. They just turned around and went back. But Grandpa wanted to go, and I said, honey, I am scared to death. I'm afraid to go in there, into a cave, you know. And he said, we're going. So I said to myself, what, the worst that can happen, I'll die. So that's it. So I went, you know. And when we got in that cave, if you ever go to Italy, don't miss it. The Blue Grotto, the most gorgeous blue, and it was large and open and big. I mean, the opening was small, but the cave wasn't at all. It was a beautiful, beautiful sight. After they moved away, Sam and I traveled by ourselves, and we get in the plane, and Sam was so happy that he was getting away from everything and going on a trip with me. I guess he felt the same way, and he'd lean over and pat my hand, and he'd say, thanks for taking me, honey.
You know, I've often wondered why do I have this yearning to travel, to have new experiences? My father traveled quite a bit, and he loves talking to people. My mother hasn't done as much traveling, but she's a very warm, sentimental person who enjoys being with people. But my grandmother, I think more than anyone, is a person that really, really wanted to go out and understand how the world worked.
See, when I go someplace, any place, it's very important to me. I want to see the millionaires' homes in their area. But it's just as important to me that I go see the slums in the lower class. I want to see the whole picture, not because I think I should. I really like it that way, you know. And so we learned a lot. We went through all these alleys and we, you know, did all these things and saw the way the other part of the world lives, but you know what? You can probably see a lot of that right here. We traveled all over the world, but we had never been to Boston.
After my grandfather died, we went on a cruise together in the Mexican Riviera. And I had never been on a cruise at that time and didn't really know what to expect. But my grandmother took me under her hand and showed me what it was like to be a sophisticated traveler on the high seas, and we went and did everything. My grandmother was probably in her mid-70s at the time, and I couldn't keep up with her. I honestly couldn't. We ate at the late seating at dinner. We ate dinner around 8 o'clock. We'd then go to a show at 10 o'clock. And starting at midnight, the discos opened and there were after parties. And I was always shy and would never go by myself. So grandmother would say, all right, I'm going with you. There were costume parties where we went back to our room at midnight and put on costumes and went out and partied.
I want to tell you something. Physically, my body won't take it, but mentally, emotionally, I'm dying to take a Mediterranean cruise and go traveling. I would just love it.
Cele and I started when we were in the Girl Scouts, and we were very young, and we went to different schools together, and we were always friends from way back. And from the Girl Scouts, then we went to high school. Cele was a year ahead of me at school, but we still were always very close friends.
Bridge, I think we started playing maybe 30 years ago when our children sort of went off, you know.
Well, she was a good student. She was very honest. I mean, she was always, I don't ever remember her being in trouble, and I don't believe a word she says about being in trouble. I really mean that.
Well, wait a minute. We belong to a poker club, which is 50 years old this year, a Friday poker club. They're a lot gone, but Cele and I are two of the originals, and we're still playing poker.
And we fuss with each other. We say exactly what we think, but we forgive each other.
Did you ever tell them about our inner circle, Cele? 5 couples belong to an inner circle. Reinglasses, Diamonds, Jacobson, and the other Jacobson, Bill and Elaine and the Dryers. And we celebrated all anniversaries and birthdays together. We still do that.
Oh, Ruth, you know I did a lot of things you didn't approve of.
I did? You did?
Yeah,
I
you
remember,
you remember.
One of the boys, his name was, something began with an M, but I can't think of his name.
Mike.
From Cleveland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike something.
I was thinking about him the other day. I said, you could never understand why.
Ruth's a prude. But she's getting better. She tells dirty jokes.
And all. And you love them.
Huh?
And you love them.
Well, I enjoy them, but I always did. I mean, I don't tell them only
No.
because I don't have the knack and I don't remember.
No.
I know exactly what's coming out of their mouth. That's good and that's bad, but you know what to expect.
I really don't say as much as I think because it depends on, with most of the people that I play cards with or that I come in contact with, I feel that there's no point to it, you know. I know how they feel, I know how they think, you know. So there's not too much point to it. If I'm very quiet, but I don't let anybody push me around. But it has to be over something important. If somebody's going to get all upset about the cards, I'm not going to make a big fuss about that. To me, that's so important. What's the difference, you know? Though I love to play bridge and I like a good game, you know. But I'm not going to go to pieces because someone had to use the wrong deck of cards and stuff like that, you know. But anything important that comes up, and then I won't let them push me. But I don't, that's why people say I'm quiet, because most of the things that come up and that they talk about and fuss about and get upset about are very unimportant to me. They just are. So why waste my energy? We do have quarrels.
We say what we
do,
think.
But I tell her off or she tells me.
We go back to where we were.
It's better that way.
You know, there's never a day that I talk to Gladys that she doesn't say to me, how long have we been friends? 60-odd years. We're friends 60. I never go back to tell her I've been friendly with you longer than that.
And then, you know, you get to thinking, human nature. Why were we all created differently? Who did this? Who's back there? Did it all happen by itself? How could it have happened? You know, there has to be something up there. There has to be something, but I don't believe that God says now, when Michael was born, he's going to be a doctor and he's going to live to the age of 92, and then he's going to be hit by a car, or that Michael is going to meet Beth and then they're going to love each other. I don't believe in that. And neither do I believe, like in Yom Kippur, when they say God writes in the book who should live and who should die. I don't believe that either. God treats everybody equal? I don't think he does. And I don't believe that Jewish people are chosen people, because if the Jewish people are the chosen people, then he's partial, and God isn't allowed to be partial. I've told that to the rabbi, and I wanted an answer. But I can't remember how they answered me, but it was not satisfactory.
Her parents, who were colorful and theatrical people, were Orthodox Jews, and she was raised in a family with 2 brothers and 2 sisters. She was one of the sisters, and the answer that was given to her for every question that she always asked, because she was inquisitive, was because that's the way we do it, because we're Jewish, because you're a girl, you don't do this, because they're boys, they do this. And I think that also informed her the rest of her life, that because the answers that they gave her were not the answers that she wanted, it had no meaning to her. Religion had no meaning to her.
If I believed that it's God's will, that everything was God's will, then I wouldn't be so upset about things that happen, because it's God's will. But I don't believe that he wills good things to happen to some people and bad things. Little kids that are 6 and 8 years old to die of cancer and tumor of the brain and all that. I don't believe that's God's will, but some people say that's God's will. If that's their, as I call it, support system, good for them. You're lucky to have it. But you know what? Ever since I was in the 8th grade, I made up a prayer that I said at night, and I say it to this day. Why am I doing this? Just to be on the safe side, huh? Not really. It's just something that just a short prayer that when I was in the 8th grade, some date stood me up or something, and I stood at the window and cried at home, and I was all dressed to go out, you know. And I stood at the window and I cried and I prayed, you know, to God. And ever since then, I have never fallen asleep. And once in a while, if I forget and fall asleep, I'll wake up at night and then it comes to me. Help the sick and help the poor, and help us to help ourselves and to help other people to help themselves, and help our children be strong in mind and body and learn to love and understand each other. Help us to be clean and good and pure and understanding, kind and understanding. That to me is something that I pray for. Being single is no joy. It's always lonely. You can keep going all day and all evening. You still wake up to an empty house and still go to sleep to an empty house. The things that kept me going when we were married 48 years, and someone said to him, "How long have you been married, you two?" And he said, "Not long enough." That made up for everything. And when after he died, and different friends of ours would say to me, I was in the office talking to Sam, and when I asked him a certain something, he answered me and he says, "Even Cele says that," or "Cele says that." In other words, if I said it, then that was it, you know. But of course he had a mind of his own, you know.
They had an unbelievable relationship. My grandfather was an incredibly traditional person, a private person, and he loved my grandmother fiercely. I remember my grandmother telling me one time how they used to make breakfast in bed for each other every other weekend. They'd take turns, and they went walking all over the place, and everywhere they went, they were holding hands and walking. My grandfather also loved my grandmother so much that he liked to be alone with her, and he was very protective of her, and I think sometimes she let him do that, even though if she ever wanted to be, could have been a fiercely independent woman.
When I first met my husband, he was a stammerer, and that was very difficult to overlook. But he had such wonderful qualities, and after we were married and as time went on, he was able to get rid of it. And I think that I was able to help him, not by saying do this or do that, but by just letting him know how I felt about him, by building up his ego. And he gave a lecture, and it was good, I wasn't lying, but I praised him more than another wife might have done, you know. And I don't know what to say. He was, as the years went on, he was different from the young fellow that I met at the University of Illinois in Champaign that cut classes with me and went boating on Mirror Lake.
I remember when he first died, and she was very shaken, and her life was so thrown off, and you know, I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know how she would react to that. And it seems like she went through this transition then, you know, where instead of focusing on all those things that she couldn't control, she decided she was going to create new things in her life, and that's when she kind of sparked.
When my grandfather passed away, I feel that there was a transformation in my grandmother. She's like the second string quarterback that was completely ready to step in case there was a problem. But you never saw her because the first string was doing just fine. My grandfather was a very domineering, assertive person. He overshadowed her to an incredible degree, and she was very comfortable with that. She didn't have that insecurity that she needed to overshadow him or correct him.
Well, I was always so busy pushing him in the front that I sat back. I was in the background. See? I mean, not conscious. When people raved about him, that made me feel good. I was never jealous, as some wives are, you know. I was happy. But then when he died, I came to the foreground. I came out. I took over. And a lot of me that I had sort of kept inside came out.
One thing that when he died, I think we all got to know her a little bit better and a little differently, and she got to assert some of the independence that she's always had, that either she hadn't needed to show before or she hadn't wanted to for whatever reason.
In some ways, my grandfather's death allowed her to blossom and allowed her to really come forward with the wisdom and with the guidance that people in the family, although they might not have recognized that they wanted, certainly was something that they needed.
You know, I can't really tell you why I did a lot of things that I did. I wanted to do them. Like I said, I have my own philosophy. If I'm not going to hurt anybody, then I can do anything I please. But I will never, ever do anything that's going to upset or hurt anybody.
I remember this as a child, too. I don't even know how old I was at the time, but I must have been old enough to remember. So my mother would say, time to take a bath. And of course, I didn't want to take a bath because I guess most little children don't. She'd say, oh, I feel something in my toes.
Oh, I have a story for you. It's coming up. It's way down here. If you don't hurry up and get in the bathtub, it's going to come up here. And when it comes out of my mouth, it's going to be gone. You better get in the bathtub.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's a Joey story, and she made up these wonderful stories about a little boy by the name of Joey and his sister Betsy.
I can remember all the kids sitting around her. I mean, even with the difference in age, and she would tell these Joey stories. And I know she was making them up. I mean, they weren't like, you know, stories that she read in a book anywhere about this little boy, Joey, and he would do this, and he would do this, and then he would do this. And it was kind of like the story, something about the story appealed to everybody, and it was probably something different to everybody at the time.
I invented this family, the Joey family, remember?
Joey and Betsy?
Yeah, Joey and Betsy.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to tell them all these stories, and of course they would all have a slight moral in the end, didn't they? But, so Frank said to me, why don't you tape them? So one day I tried to tape them, and the minute I knew that tape recorder was on, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think she's very creative. I mean, I remember when I was younger and I would go over there and go up into Mom's old bedroom and, you know, see all see her easel and see all the pictures that she painted. And
I wanted to paint something. I felt like I didn't care about anything or anybody. I just free. So I just made these big wild strokes, you know, to heck with everybody and everything. Yeah, I was never happy when I finished this one. And I always said I'd go back and put a touch to it, but somehow I never did. And that one up there, I remember I cut the eye out of it. That's a collage up there. I can't remember what was in the back of my mind when I did that one, but there was something in the back of my mind when I did all of them, you know? I might pass the house or a place and look at it and would give me an idea or a feeling or something. But I just didn't copy anything. I'm the same way with recipes. I don't follow recipes, but they give me an idea about what to do. You can see that I felt very free that day, unusually free. Devil may take us, you know? Yes, of course, I lost on the beach, you know, a little boat there, and just lost. See, and here's the wind again, you know. And this, I put sand on here, feel it.
Yes?
That's what I did. I like to do stuff like that. A lot of people like this one particularly, and I'm not sure just why. They're really all, what kind of, I used acrylics.
Mhm.
I didn't do any watercolor at all. My husband would say to me, what's that supposed to be? See, he was more cut and dry than I was. And I'd say, well, I can't tell you what that's supposed to be. What do you think that is supposed to be? And he'd say, well, it doesn't look like anything to me. But then he would end up by saying, well, it's better than going to a psychiatrist. It was an outlet. But I haven't painted since he died.
And why not? I was wondering about that.
I can't exactly tell you why not. I guess his praise of me must have been important. I wasn't aware of it. But I think that might be part of the reason. And all of a sudden, I lost my desire.
Even though maybe I only see her once or twice a week, but I talk to her at least 3-4 times a day.
I think my mother and I are best friends. We still are to this day. We talk to each other several times a day.
She calls me first thing in the morning, or if she doesn't call me, I call her.
I always call in the morning to see how she is.
Maybe later in the morning she'll call me to ask me something.
I call her to ask her a recipe.
She goes out to dinner. She calls me after she comes home.
You know, I call her to tell her some crazy thing that happened.
Then we call each other and say goodnight.
Some people might think that's too much, but that's the way we are. We're just.
And that definitely goes from one generation to the next, because we talk to each other
we do that
every day.
Go all the way down to Cleveland Avenue, and you'll see where it goes off to the right. That's goes off to McKinley.
Okay.
Go off that way. And then you go left on McKinley.
Okay.
All the way down south. I haven't been there for years. Maybe it's not there anymore. It was 1136 South McKinley. And that was our first house when we came to Canton.
And how long did you live there for?
Well, I would say for about maybe 6, 7, 8 years, something like that.
Huh. And
then we built this house up here, moved up here.
the one on 22nd?
Yeah, the one on 22nd.
How long did you live there for?
Lived there until, let's see, when was it? My dad lost it. I don't remember when it was.
How did he lose it? Financially, you mean?
Financially, yeah, he lost
That must have been tough.
I wasn't too much aware of a problem, you know what I mean? Because my dad was like that.
A lot of ups and downs.
He didn't go to pieces when things like that happened, you know. He went on to the next project. So,
Here we go. Hold on.
where are we?
There it is, 1136.
It's still there. Let's pull
Yeah.
up in the drive real close. So
Okay.
I can see. Are there people on the porch? Yeah? This must be a black neighborhood by now. I want you to know when we moved here, it had to be 60, 70 years ago. This was a brand new home, and this neighborhood was the neighborhood. It was beautiful. Are there people on the porch?
No, but there's a nice picture, nice statue of Jesus.
Is there a swing? There was a swing on the porch. I lived here with my brothers Art and Charles and my sister Dorothy. And I was so happy. I guess I just didn't know any better. I mean, I wasn't doing anything exciting, but I was so happy. Just sitting on the swing. We had one of those swings. Did you ever see them that hangs from the ceiling, you know, and you swing? I would sit there by the hour, just dreaming. And it wasn't of a white Christmas. But I used to walk from here way up in rain and snow and ice, and I never thought anything of it. I mean, that's the way we all did, you know? My mother didn't drive me to school.
There, you can look in. You see?
Yeah, there's the bedroom. Can you see the bedroom?
Yeah.
Over there, over here, the living room is the bedroom. Gee, Michael. What's it all about? You know what I mean? Here, I'm going to take your hand. I like these steps.
Let me just, real quick, while you're standing down here in the stable, let me just knock on one last.
So, Cele, is it emotional for you to come back here?
Well, not in an unhappy way, no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sentimental. I love it all. I love this. I think this is wonderful. Jesus wasn't here. My brothers drove, my brother Art, and when they went to college, they took the car apart and left it in the garage till they came back, you know. Well, after 1 year, my father had enough of that. So the following year, when they left and took the car apart, he didn't say one word to them. He never drove in his life. He had the car put together, and he got in that car, and he drove. He wasn't going to sit around and wait for them to come back to school to drive him around. Yes, we're on Navarre, and up there was a drugstore. And on the left was a confectionery store where they sold candy, and they had a big box of candy that big in the window. And I used to think, I'm going to save up my money and buy that big box of candy and give it to my teacher, Lillian Goodman. I went to school over there on South Market Street. Now, over here on the right is where B.G., my father, had his tailor store and his real estate shop. Isn't it fun? Say, to me, I love to do what we're doing now. I enjoy this, you know, looking at all these old houses.
Me too.
And I would love to go into all these old houses. And you know, there's a storybook, there's a story in every house. When I'm in Florida, you've been to Florida, haven't you? And when I ride up on A1A, you know, along the ocean, and you see those condominiums with hundreds of people living in, and I think, my God, each window, each one could write a book. It's a family, a whole universe to them. You know what I mean? This is a corner. Now it's the next house.
Go ahead.
Right here. This is it. Right here. Okay, here we are. Oh, I lived here too with Art and Charles and Dorothy and my mother and dad. And there's a third floor here, and we had a live-in help by the name of Jenny, real fat girl. And she was fun, and she lived with us on the third floor. When I met Sam and I brought him here from Chicago, they lived in an apartment. And afterwards he used to tease me and said, the only reason I married you is I thought you were rich. When he came to see this house down here. Now it's like a little alley. It's called Alta Place. Look for Alta Place.
Okay, this is 18th.
18th. Now Alta Place is right off of it. Go slowly. Has a front porch. Maybe it's not next to an alley. That's here. It isn't this a little? Yeah, here it is, right here. My father lost the other house financially. So, and it was a nice little house when we moved in here. And it was a nice neighborhood, too. Yeah, it was much more modest, but it was 3 bedrooms. It was very, very nice house. We stayed here till I got married out of this house. Not in, the ceremony wasn't here, but I was living here. And my mother died in this house, and then Art and Charles, my brother and sister-in-law, moved in, and they lived here with my father. I'm not a martyr, but I have sincerely been more excited when I'm giving than when I'm receiving. And I could tell this to my children or my great-grandchildren. You know, the Bible says more blessed, you know, Bob, to give than to give than to receive. I'm not thinking about that. I personally, when I was ready to give one of my grandchildren a present, I couldn't wait to give it to them. But I didn't get excited on Mother's Days or birthdays when they were giving me something. I appreciated it, but that wasn't nearly as much fun. It just wasn't.
When I was pregnant, I kept on thinking that I just had to get to this pregnancy, and I just wanted my grandmother to have her, you know, to be able to know her great-grandchildren, for all the gifts that she's ever given me. I just completely wanted to give her this gift. And I thought about it every day that I was pregnant. And I think maybe that's why the babies came early, because I was so anxious for them to be here and for her to know them. And she was so anxious. Every day she called me and said, "What are they going to look like? I can't wait to see what they're going to look like." And I was even more anxious for her, for them to be born, than I was for me. And there's no way we can give her back most of what she's given us. And she's, as everyone said, she's so generous in giving.
That's true.
But I feel that I gave her these 2 children, and that's the best gift that I could have given her. And then to see her with them and how much she loves them and how much joy they bring to her is a gift back to me, and it just, that's what keeps happening. You know, I try and do something for her, and it becomes a gift back to us.
Child of my child of my child. Child of a child of my child. You gotta love and be loved to be happy. Without that, there's nothing. There's nothing more wonderful in the world than love. And if you don't have love, you're not really living. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a materialistic love, or maybe not even love of a human being. If you have a great love for life, or for nature, or for, you know, whatever. But you've got to have love. That's the salt and pepper. And you've got to nurture that love. Otherwise it dies, just like the flowers. Right to the very end, you have to nurture it.
May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young. May you stay forever young. May you grow up to be righteous. May you grow up to be true. May you always know the truth and see the light surrounding you. May you always be courageous, stand upright and be strong, and may you stay forever young. young, and may you stay forever young. May your hands always be busy, and may your feet always be swift. May you have a strong foundation when the winds of changes shift. May your heart always be joyful, and may your song always be sung, and may you stay forever young, and may